the still point of the turning world. Neither flesh nor fleshless, neither from nor towards. At the still point, there the dance is. But neither arrest nor movement. And do not call it fixity where past and future are gathered. Neither movement from nor towards. Neither ascent nor decline. Except for the point, the still point. There would be no dance. And there is only the dance. Dancing, turning, to turn, the most active verb in our language. Turn in, turn over, turn on, turn up, turn down, turn off, turn into. We turn everything, and in turn everything is turning. In the universe, the earth turns round the sun. The moon turns around us, turning around the sun. Round and round we go. And nature shows us the way. What you see in this film happens within a radius of roughly 200 miles of this planet's surface. Anatolia. The time span covers 10,000 years. It is winter now. When the season turns into spring, this land will once again begin its yearly cycle of birth, expansion, fruition, and death. These are the great plains of Konya, once an inland sea. 10,000 years ago, after the Ice Age, when the snows melted, trees grew here in abundance. Man planted his first wheat, domesticated animals, brewed hackleberry wine, and built a city. Bread was made, perhaps even innovated. This part of Turkey is still known as the breadbasket, but all that remains to the naked eye of the work of those first settlers is this small mound on the endless horizon. It is the oldest known city in the world. In 1962, after 2 years tramping the countryside and studying where the wealth of natural products had been distributed thousands of years ago, James Mellaart decided to lift the top off this mound and so begin the race backwards to disclose the secrets of the lives of those ancient ancestors of ours. Luckily, he chose to dig horizontally and not vertically, and what he uncovered was truly amazing. Level upon level of houses, all pressed together and holding each other up, somewhat like a crazy sort of modern apartment block, except that there was no entrance hall. The roofs were made exceptionally strongly to support the passing parade. All houses were entered through the roofs, and they also provided thoroughfares and even marketplaces for the people who lived under them. This is what Çatal Hu looks like today. A ruin of a ruin. The site is vast, 32 acres, of which only one has been revealed. It is now 7 years since Mellaart was forced to stop digging, and the wind and the rain have done their best to recover what had been covered for so long. Of the 131 houses which Mellaart examined on all their 13 levels, 51 were shrines. But shrines to what? Shrines dedicated to whom? Mellaart found his answer in this lady, Big Mama. She sits on a stately throne with leopard armrests. The animals are her creatures. She is giving birth. She is at once recognizable. as a huge, indomitable mum, symbol of the replenishing earth. She is the queen bee who rules all with an omnipotent presence. And she appears throughout Çatal in many shapes and positions. Always pregnant, nearly always bulbous-breasted, and virtually mouthless. Hers must have been the national product, babies. For although the life expectancy of the people of Çatal was not much more than 30, pathologists examining the remains of the ladies of Çatal verified that nearly all of them had borne between 10 and 12 children. Her product was poured out into the surrounding land, eventually populating most of Europe and India. And breasts, both fertility symbols. First, the breasts. Well, they are remarkable not just for their decorative distinction as friezes round the walls of many shrines, but for what Mellaart found buried inside them. Who would have guessed vulture skulls and the jawbones of wild boars? Vultures and wild boars, both scavengers, creatures that live off the deaths of other animals. The explanation of such a bizarre phenomenon is hard to conceive. Perhaps it could be that they were placed in the breasts to remind people that in my beginning is my end, as T.S. Eliot was to write several millenniums later. It is believed that when death occurred in this ancient city, the body was placed out in the plains to await the ministrations of one or both of these carrion consumers. The bones were then collected and brought inside the house to be painted blue, green, red, or yellow, according to the spiritual status of the individual, and then finally buried under the sleeping places of the inhabitants of the house. It has been called tetrad living, a four-sided room with each side designated to its own particular use. One for sleeping and the burial of the dead, one for storing and preparing food, one for the continuation of their crafts, and one for eating. Whatever the reason for the sinister contents of breasts in Çatal Hu, there is nothing difficult about bulls. They are still providing us with the same symbolic function today. But these bulls were bigger and more bullish, it seems. The horn span of those found here has been estimated at over 6 feet, which makes them pretty enormous. Strangely enough, animals were also domesticated here. Transcriptions from the wall paintings show us little pieces in the giant jigsaw that makes up the picture of this extraordinary place. Woman at the center, solid and seemingly indestructible, while man leaps with abandon and cavorts on the backs of animals, perhaps anticipating the bull dances made famous by the Minuans of Crete. He parades, resplendent in his leopard skin and feathers. He hauls on tongue and tail. He is at the same time lithe, busy, and funny. This is the perspective view of the eruption of the volcano Hasan Dagh and the planned city below. Hasan Dagh has been extinct for 6,000 years. The world's first known landscape painter painted this mural with a very fine animal hair brush on a wall that had been plastered and replastered with pure white marl. Bees, beehives, hands, palms, electricity. Of the hundreds of bas-reliefs uncovered by Mellaart's assistants using dental tools, these are the familiar themes. What they represented to the people here, we can only guess. But it is very apparent that here was a race of innovators, lively and industrious, imaginative designers, a matriarchal society on whose walls no reproduction of war or scene of mutual destruction is depicted. The only reproduction in full swing here was of kind, children, and it must have been very difficult to maintain such a burgeoning population on what they could grow and hunt exclusively. Mellaart thinks that they must have traded. Certainly shells from the coast 100 miles away were found, and obsidian and flint from the mountains in the other direction. Another theory is that this was a holy city. With such a propensity of shrines, it could have been. Or perhaps Mellaart uncovered just that part of the city which was the area set aside for worship and the practice of various symbolic rites. No one can tell until the rest of the city is revealed, and maybe not even then. What one can tell is that women in this part of the world have not changed so monstrously. They are still solid and indomitable, still going about their business, never hurrying, never stopping. They are continuance, revolving and unchanging. 6,000 years after Çatal Hu, and not so far away, these ladies appeared. They are the sphinxes that guard the gateway to the ancient Hittite city of Alajahuyuk, younger sisters of their famous relation in Egypt. They lose their looks and remain sentinel, with nothing left to guard. Between 2000 BC and 1400 BC, the Hattites and the Hittites, with their emergent cultures, slimmed Our Lady down. She's now a twig-like creature, made of silver and gold. Inside this great outcropping of rock lies the national sanctuary and open-air shrine of the Hittite Empire, a maze of corridors and galleries, all carved with splendid cartouches for these past 3,000 years. Here is the god Sharuma, grasping King Tudhaliya by the wrist and holding up a man, a sort of symbolic gingerbread man, for his inspection. But it is the coming together of the gods and the goddesses in the great open-air gallery that holds the attention. Along the west wall stream the gods, tall hats on, left arms extended. And here come the goddesses on the east wall, the Hittite Amazons. Their queen Puruhepa ruled for her son Tudhaliya IV and was probably instrumental in constructing this sanctuary. The god of heaven and the sun goddess of Arena meet forever on the north wall of Yazolkaya. They plight their troth. He stands with one of his sacred bulls astride the shoulders of two deified mountains, Nani and Huzi. He wears horns in his hat. The leopard armrests of the goddess of Çatal Hu have become panthers and have stood up. Out of this union is said to come the perfect being, 3,000-year-old selective breeding. Artemis, known as the beautiful Artemisia, or Artemisia of the many breasts. She's come a long way since Çatal Hu. Instead of two rather pendulous mammalaries, she now has hundreds. Like the big mama of Çatal Hu, who turned into the goddess of the Hittites, she represents endless fecundity, and men still worship her. Instead of leopards and panthers for her creatures to stand or lean upon, her body is encrusted with all her heraldic beasts. Goats, bees, lions, and chimera. Although now she stands quite sedately in the museum at Selçuk, once all this was her domain. The mighty port of Ephesus, whose white marble roads stretch from the then harbor to the agora, the marketplace, whose theater saw performances with 24,000 spectators seated on its marble tiers, whose Artemisian was one of the 7 wonders of the world, whose trade alone made her the envy of the whole of Asia Minor, and drew Greeks and Romans alike to vie for her favors. Ephesus was the largest and most important port in the Hellenic world, and Artemis held sway. She wore men's destinies around her neck in a necklace of zodiacal signs. whether she bestowed on them wonder of the world, material wealth, slavery, love, or just plain hard grind. She was the moon, the lady to be placated if one needed luck, and wondrous temples of extraordinary mathematical genius rose in her name. In the time of the Emperor Alexander, a man named Herostratus, seeking to be remembered forever, burnt down the temple of Artemisia. Alexander, ever ready to use the cachet of the magic name of Artemis, offered to rebuild, having made sacrifices amid the ruins. But the wily citizens, mindful that agreement would be tantamount to occupation by the Greeks, fobbed him off with flattery, insisting that it was not fitting for a god to build a temple to another god. Alexander was assuaged and left them in peace to reconstruct their new Artemisium, which they did on exactly the same site as the old, and their city flourished the more. When Greek dominance in the then world declined and the Romans came along, Ephesus still flourished. It became the smart thing for those suing for favors from Rome to build temples dedicated to the Caesar up the main marble thoroughfare. This one was for Hadrian and was built by a man called P. Quintilis. Nero, Claudius, and Trajan held their infamous circuses in the theater, had it reconstructed underneath to accommodate animals and Christians alike. But the Romans were much more prosaic than the Greeks. They turned Artemis into Diana and took away all her breasts except two. They worshipped her as a chaste huntress, goddess of the moon, a very cool lady, still eminently desirable, but more a body, less a mother. Her popularity began to wane. Later, when St. Paul came to preach in the theater, the makers of Artemisia statuettes, fearful the trade would suffer, began to shout in unison, "Great is Diana of the Ephesians," inciting the multitude to eject the disciple from their city. Pandemonium ensued, and only the calming words of the Grammatius, a sort of Lord Mayor, and the appearance of the local constabulary prevented a major catastrophe. But the advent of Christianity marked the beginning of the end for Artemisia and for Ephesus. Her splendiferous and busy harbor began to silt up with mud as the sea receded. The last column of the second great Artemisium left in an upright position. Her population diminished. She was left and forgotten. She remains a dead city, resurrected by archaeologists, white dead marble, soaking up the sun. After the crucifixion of Jesus, the disciples threw lots as to which parts of the world they were going to convert. St. John the Apostle's lot fell to Asia Minor. He arrived somewhat after the death of Christ, and with him was the Virgin Mary, who had been entrusted to his care by Jesus himself. Mary was not enraptured by this bustling, trendy businessman's town, with its blatant brothels and endless wearing noise, nor were the people of Ephesus exactly entranced by the arrival of the mother of a rival, new god. And finally, Mary begged John somewhere outside, somewhere up and away from the persecutions and the long, hot summers of Ephesus. And so he did. With the aid of some traders, fellow countrymen, He found a retreat for Mary, high, high on the mountain that looks away from Ephesus and out over the sea. Here she lived out the rest of her life. It is still called Mariam Meana. Mariam, Mary, Anna, the mother. And this year, the Pope has declared it the place of papal jubilee. From Mary the Mother to Mevlana. Who is Mevlana? They're not so very distant. And although they did not turn into each other like all the lovely ladies, they have a true affinity just the same. Mevlana is Mevlana. He too an advocate of love. He follows the same regular, logarithmic spiral to which the budding fern unfolds, or the seashell is made. This is his tomb in Konya.
Listen to this reed, forlorn, breathing, even since it was torn from its rushy bed, a strain of impassioned love and pain. The secret of my song, though near, none can see, none can hear. Oh, for a friend to know the sign and mingle all his soul with mine. It's the flame of love that fired me. It's the wine of love inspired me. Would you learn how lovers bleed? Then listen, listen to the reed. Mevlana is to Turkey what Shakespeare is to England. And more, the quintessence of poetic exultancy in images. A saint, a mystic, a teacher. His name was Jelaluddin Rumi, and he died in 1273 in Konya, about 30 miles from the ancient site of Çatal Hu. Mevlana is the man who wrote poems, stories, aphorisms, books said to have inspired Chaucer, Dante, and all the followers of serious literature of the 14th century. Mevlana is the man who 40 days after the murder of his great friend and teacher, Shams Tabrizi, donned new clothes, the tall hat of the dervishes, said to represent a tombstone. The black cape is his body, and the white dress he wore as the bridal gown to illustrate his union with the beloved. The dervishes bow to the sheepskin where the sheikh sits. At the same time, they bow to the axis on which the world turns. This is the Sama, the ritual of the Mevlevi, the whirling dervishes, now outlawed in Turkey and only allowed to perform in the week of Mevlana's death day. The Sheikh, who is a direct descendant of Mevlana himself, enters and the ceremony begins. First, the incantation, a song of love and dedication, telling of Mevlana, Shams-i Tabrizi. They sing of Sultan Walid, the son of Mevlana. The dervishes bow their heads in deference as each is mentioned.
شمس تبریزی که دارد نعتی پیغامبر
Sultan Walid walk, where each man in slow deliberation contemplates and acknowledges the Godhead in his neighbor. He looks at the spot between the eyes, sees and recognizes, and turns. When the dervish discards his body, the black cape, and begins to turn, he is celebrating his reunion with the cosmic order of things. With the permission of his sheikh, who kisses his hat in a gesture of assent to his body's departure, he unfolds into a whirling sphere. The right hand opens upwards to receive rahmet, grace from heaven. The left hand downwards to pass this beneficence into the earth. People may think the turning of the Mevlevi is a state of trance or an ecstasy. It is, in fact, a higher level of consciousness, an awareness of themselves, of their surroundings. They look through the thumb and the forefinger as they turn. They know where they are, and they know who they are. To undertake the teaching of the way of Mevlana, a salik or searcher must first be accepted after scrutiny as to the real desire he has to love and to learn. He then embarks on a course of many years of apprenticeship and dedication. Perhaps spending a year here, a year there with a master carpet maker, a baker, a hat maker, or perhaps a coppersmith. Each will teach him a skill with his hands, as well as being a guide to his own evolution and esoteric development. His teaching can be compared with the making of bread. Starting with the raw grain, he is hand ground into flour and placed together with some other ingredients with the yeast, his catalyst. He rises and is kneaded and left to rise again, kneaded again, and then molded into the shape of the final loaf. The more the kneading, the lighter the loaf. Next, the fire. Emerges a metamorphosized whole instead of a disintegrated mass of grains. These salams, or turnings and unfoldings, are repeated 3 times, and then the 4th, when the dervish finds his position and then turns on his own axis as a planet in the universe. rises and takes part, turning in the place of the sun. A Salik must be a free man. Free of worries, free of the world and in the world. He must have a trade which will give him freedom. A man of knowledge is as free as the stars, accepting an order to which he submits. Love is bondage willingly accepted by the free. The turning of the spheres is perpetual returning. Mevlana said, life is returning. I have circled a while with the 9 fathers in each heaven. For years I have turned with the stars in their signs. I was invisible a while. I was dwelling with him. I am the pangs of the jealous. I am the pain of the sick. I am both cloud and rain. I have rained on the meadows. Never did the dust of mortality settle on my skirt, O dervish. I have gathered a wealth of roses in the garden of eternity. I am not of water nor fire. I am not of the froward wind. I am not of molded clay. I have mocked at them all. O sun, I am not Shamset Tabrizi. I am pure light. If you see me, beware. Don't tell anyone what you saw.
Aleykümselam ve rahmetullahi ve berekatühü. Gel, yine gel, yine gel, yine gel. Kafir, mecusi, putperest olsan da yine gel. Bizim deryamız umutsuzluk deryamı değildir. 100 kere ölüm olmuş olsan da yine gel.